Hello YouTube, and welcome to my dark editing cave. Today, we will be talking about low light, nighttime, travel photos. Have you ever gone to a really cool location at night and not been able to get the feel that you wanted out of your photos? You're capturing the pixels, but you're not capturing the feeling of how vibrant and awesome it was to be there. Well, today we're gonna take a look at how to take pictures that look like this and make them look like this. So let's jump into Lightroom and get started. All right, so now we've got our nighttime low light travel photos in Lightroom. So let's take a look. This photo is from Xi'an, China, which has a population of about 8 million people. So it's definitely like hustling and bustling. And this is really cool mix of a lot of, the modern structures mixed with a lot of classical elements like these red lanterns and this cool building in the background. So I want to give it that cool nighttime neon glow kind of look that you've probably seen in other photos all over Instagram and just in general. So the first thing I want to do is pull up the shadows. You can see I already got a ton of detail back in the shadowy areas, but I also still have some really bright highlights. So let's pull that down quite a bit, and it's starting to look a little bit crazy, but don't worry, we are coming back to it. Next, now the whole thing is underexposed. So I'm gonna raise it up probably like maybe a whole stop and a half. Actually, let's go all the way to 2 stops. There is a method to the madness here, don't worry about that. But now it's really lacking a lot of punch. So let's drag this contrast all the way up to about, what looks good, like 40%. That's looking pretty good. We've got a lot of punch, and there's definitely something you can overdo. But for this type of photo, I really like pulling this clarity up, and you can see that adds just a lot of punch to like the lines, to the detail of the photo. It is doing a couple of negative things though. One thing you'll see is here in the corners, it adds a lot of noise to pull up the shadows this much and to add that clarity. That is partially because the lens that I was using has a lot of vignetting and barrel distortion. So one thing I'm gonna do is go down to the profile corrections and just go ahead and turn that off. When you click back and forth, you can see it does kind of a lot, but honestly with it off, I think the photo is just fine, and it undoes some of the, it's trying to compensate for the natural vignetting of the lens and for the barrel distortion. But I turn that off and it darkens it up, and you see a lot less noise in the corners. There's still noise in this image, and we're going to fix that in a minute, but let's get everything else right first. So now I'm noticing I want some blacks. I want like a nice dark point for the eye to settle on. So we're gonna bring the blacks down a little bit, and that adds sort of like a contrast, but only to the darker parts of the photo. So maybe around 30, I like that. Accidentally clicked dehaze, I don't want any of that for this photo. Now let's start messing with the colors, because that's what's really gonna make this photo stand out. So like I said, I want those neon tones, so I want some cooler tones in this image. So I'm gonna bring the white balance to like 2900, somewhere in there, and I want more magentas, like blues, magentas, cyans. Those are really awesome neon colors that give you that sort of modern city feel. So we really want to focus on those. Already we've got some really cool results, but let's go into the individual colors and see what else we can get. This photo has a lot of cool blues. So let's see if we can make them even more like stand out even more. So let's pull the blues over into this sort of like cyan color. I think that looks really cool. Definitely adds like a modern, cool feel to it. And then let's, I'm gonna pull them down, just the blues. I'm gonna pull them down just a little bit to bring some detail back into it. Because when they're too bright, you don't really see the color as much. But if we pull it down to like 25-ish, then I think that looks really good. Something I'm noticing now is the horizon's a little bit off. So I'm gonna fix that just a little bit. Doesn't need a whole lot, but now we got some better vertical lines. Just a hair, that's looking really good. So the blues are looking good, the cool tones are looking good. Let's see what we can do with the warmer tones. So this is looking pretty good, but I bet we can, yeah, a little bit brighter. I like that it pops a little bit more when we bring it up a little bit, but I want it to be a little bit more towards the reddish colors. Yeah, so it kind of keeps our theme going of the reds in the lanterns and in this building back here. Let's do the same with the yellows. Let's pull them into the orange a little bit. Ooh, see, we can turn them green a little bit too, but let's keep them a little bit warmer and a little bit brighter, just to add some pop around these areas. And so far that's looking pretty good. I don't think we need to do anything to the reds, but let's just test it out real quick. What if we make them brighter? Definitely not darker, a little bit brighter. Honestly, I kind of like that. It brings your eye towards the reds a little bit more, and that's pretty cool. Do they need, yeah, let's give them just a little bit of saturation punch, and that's pretty cool. And no, we don't want them pink, we don't want them yellow. Let's keep them right there at the red. And then finally, last but not least, let's do some noise reduction. You can see, especially over here, there's a lot of noise down here where we pulled up the shadows a whole bunch. So it automatically does some for the color, but let's add maybe like 30. 30 is what I found is about as much as you can do before you really start losing detail. So I think 30 is pretty good, and that gets rid of a ton of noise. And right now we're zoomed in 1:1. Most people, especially if you're just posting on Instagram or Facebook, aren't gonna look 1:1. So I'm not too concerned with the noise. I think we really improved this photo. Let's look at the before. Definitely this shot is unusable. Even if we just pulled up the exposure a little bit, still not great. But here, edited, we've made this really a standout travel photo. I really like it. This is one of my favorite photos from my trip, and I think we made it look pretty cool. Now let's move on to a different awesome big neon city. We have Las Vegas. So these are the fountains. This is the Bellagio and the fountains at the Bellagio. I took this from the Eiffel Tower on the other side of the street. So let's see what we can do here. The first thing I want to do, again, I want that same kind of feel, that vibrant neon city feel. So first thing I'm going to do is pull up the shadows, and this already looks really crazy and fake. But again, don't worry, we are getting there. So I'm gonna pull down the highlights also. Now it looks even worse, but again, don't worry about any of that. It is underexposed now, so let's pull it up a full stop with the exposure. Let's push that contrast. We're already we've done a ton to improve this photo in terms of making it a vibrant neon city. And again, for this type of photo, I typically never touch this panel at all, except for these types of photos. The clarity can really add a lot of punch to these photos. So definitely don't want to overdo it. Look at how crazy this guy gets when you crank it all the way up. But let's add maybe like 40. I think that's pretty good. It did introduce a lot of noise to the sky. Again, we will handle that later. So now we've got the basics out of the way. Maybe let's make it just a little bit cooler and pull in a little bit more magentas. That's definitely, a lot of this is just based on what your taste is. I'm just trying to show you how to get those really cool like neon travel photos from big vibrant cities like this. Again, the blues are gonna be really important. So let's pull some of these blues over into the cyans. You can see it affects the sky also. You can localize this, But that's a good reason to not overdo it, because if you have a fake looking sky like this, no matter how cool some of these colors look down here, the sky just really takes you out of it. And if it looks too fake, people are just gonna look at that and be like, oh, he over processed that. So we want a nice balance where it looks processed, it looks like your unique style, or at least a unique style, without people just being like, oh, that's just like a crazy Instagram filter or something. So that's looking pretty good. Again, let's pull it down a little bit so that so you can see, especially down at the bottom, when I pull it down, you get a lot more of the color back instead of being just sort of like bright blue or bright white. We get yeah, around 30. I like it around 30. So now this noise is actually kind of killing me right now, so I tried to save this for the end, but let's see. Yeah, even just right around 30, we took care of a ton of that noise, and the sky looks natural again. That's probably a plane or something. Let's just take that out real quick. Bam, awesome. Didn't even notice that until just now. So already we've done a ton to improve this photo. Let's see, I kind of want, since we added these teals and the blues, let's throw in a little bit more towards the warm colors for balance. So let's brighten up oh yeah, that makes a huge difference. So let's brighten up the oranges a little bit, and let's give them a bit more saturation. That's definitely too much. So let's give them like 20. So that's looking pretty good right there. Let's do the same thing with the yellows. Yeah, here you can see, especially down around the water around here, when I punch up those yellows, it makes a big difference, and I think that looks pretty good. But let's also brighten them up. So that's looking pretty good so far. We've got some really cool, we've got the reds of the cars, we've got the orange golds of the buildings, we've got green aqua, we've got blue, we've got a cool white highlight here that really draws your eye in. So I think we did a really cool job. And look at all these little dots, these houses, we've got the warm lights, we've got cool lights. So I think we really achieved what we're going for. Here's the before. Not a bad photo, especially if you just bump up the exposure a little bit. But this feels like Vegas to me. And real quick, before we end this part of the episode, let's look at another photo I did from Vegas. This is actually, here you can see I'm shooting straight at the Bellagio, and you can see Caesar's Palace right here. I just turned the camera a little bit, here's Caesar's Palace again, to get a different angle of the strip, more of the strip. So something really cool, once you've edited a photo like that, if you know that you're gonna want similar settings, just hit this previous button and it pulls in all the edits you did from the last photo. The only difference is this one is a little bit underexposed, so it's a good starting point. Let's just pull this up one more stop, there we go. And we've got another awesome neon photo. This one has even more cool neon lights. I love the pinks, the orange, the blue. We got a ton of cool colors, and all we had to do was hit this previous button and up the exposure because it was so similar to how we would edit the last one. All right, so here we are back in the dark editing cave. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. If you're interested in any of the gear I used to get these shots, please check it out in the description box below, and be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.